All right, diving in today, and we're going deep on SQL.
Ooh, yeah, the universal language of data, they call it.
You got it. And, especially for anyone out there gearing up for tech interviews, especially those heavy on the data side, let me tell you, understanding SQL, it's not just some nice to have.
Oh, no, it can really set you apart.
It's a total game changer. Interviewers, they're looking for that ability to think logically about data, and SQL, well, that's how you showcase it.
It's the proof, right?
Yeah.
In so many roles these days, you're going to be working with databases. So being able to explain, hey, this is how I'd pull specific info, how I'd manipulate it using SQL, that shows real depth,
Right.
way beyond just clicking around in some interface.
Absolutely. It tells them, hey, I get the fundamentals of how data works, how to really handle it.
Exactly.
So whether you're, actively prepping for an interview right now, or maybe you need to get up to speed for a meeting, lots of data talk coming up, or hey, even if you're just curious about this foundational tech, this deep dive, it's for you.
We've gone through all our sources, really pulled out those core SQL concepts, the ones you need to know, and we're going to present them in a way that's clear, it's structured, but don't worry.
It's not going to overwhelm y'all.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
Today's all about giving you that SQL knowledge, the kind that'll really shine in an interview setting.
That's the mission.
From the basics of querying single tables, multiple tables, all the way to the more, well, let's call them advanced techniques. Window functions, set operations.
Ooh, sounds fancy.
Think of this as your strategic SQL briefing.
Love it. All right, let's break it down, starting with the most fundamental thing, the foundation. How do you get data from a single table? Our sources, they all highlight the select statement.
The workhorse of SQL.
Right. Simplest form, select from, that grabs everything, every single column.
The whole shebang.
But here's the thing. In an interview, you want to show them you're thinking smart, thinking about efficiency.
You don't want to be pulling everything if you don't need it.
Exactly. So specifying the columns you actually need, like select id, name from city, that's often a better move.
It shows you're being deliberate, right? That you're considering the data you need. That kind of thoughtful approach, interviewers eat that up.
Makes sense.
And here's a little pro tip, something you can mention to really drive this home.
Yeah.
Selecting only the columns you need can actually improve query performance, especially when you're dealing with, massive data sets.
Oh, that's a good one.
Our sources also talked about using AS for aliases. So select name as city name from city. Basically, you're renaming the name column to city name in your results.
So it's all about clarity then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you're presenting data, or maybe you're working with multiple tables and they've got columns with the same name. Imagine trying to explain a really complex query to an interviewer. Aliases, they make it so much easier to follow.
Makes total sense. Now, let's be real. You almost never want all the data, right? You need to
Everything.
filter.
Filtering, absolutely crucial.
And the where clause, that's your best friend.
Your go-to tool.
It is. You'll be using those familiar comparison operators, greater than, less than, not equal to, all that good stuff.
The building blocks.
So say an interviewer throws you a curveball, asks you to find all customers who've spent over a certain amount.
You'd immediately jump to where total spent greater than, and then whatever that amount is.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there. Be ready to talk about combining those conditions and D.
Or it's a bit not for negation.
Right. And you know what else our sources highlighted? The like operator. It's really useful. Think of it this way. The interviewer wants you to find all products that start with a specific letter. What do?
Where product name like 8%. You got it. And make sure you explain that percent is a wild card, stands for any sequence of characters, and then for a single character. It shows you're comfortable with pattern matching.
Which is huge in data analysis.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It is. And what if you need values within a specific range?
Ah, that is the tween time.
Select product name from products where priced between 10 and 20. Nice and clean.
Easy to understand.
It is.
Yeah.
And if you need to check against a specific set of values, well, in is your friend. Where customer in 101, 105, 110, something like that.
Yep. But here's a critical point, and this is where I see people trip up in interviews all the time. Handling missing values.
Ah, yes. The dreaded NLL.
You can't use equals or not equals with NEL. Got to use I is not NLL or I is NLL.
It's a little quirk, but it's important. Being clear on this, it shows you really know your SQL.
Interviewers notice that for sure.
They do. All right, so we've got the data we want, but now we got to present it, right? Make it look good.
Got to organize it.
That's where order by white comes in. Select order date, total amount from orders, order by order date, BSE. That'll sort your orders by date, newest first.
And in an interview, you can really impress them by mentioning ASC for ascending order, DESC for descending.
Shows you know how to control that presentation, make the results easy to read, always a good thing.
Okay, so single table, we got that covered.
Yeah.
Filtering, nailed it. Presenting it clearly, done. But you know where the real power comes in, especially for interviews?
Let's hear it.
Combining data from multiple tables.
Ah, the joins. We're getting into the good stuff now. We are. Our sources, they outline several types. Most basic one, the one you gotta know, is inner join.
Or sometimes just joy on,
Right. This one, it only gives you rows where there's a match in both tables.
based on a specific condition, of course.
Of course. Now, what I find really fascinating here, and this is gold for interviews, is the on clause.
It's all about relationships.
It is. It's where you define explicitly how those tables are connected. Like,
Yeah.
say you've got an employees table and a departments table. You join them using a common key, maybe something like employee.departmented, department.eas.
That shared piece of information.
Exactly. When you're explaining this in an interview, really emphasize how important it is to be super clear about this relationship. Avoid ambiguity. Make sure you're getting the right data when you combine everything.
So true. You don't want to be joining on the wrong things and ending up with a mess.
All right, then we got left join.
Think of it like this. Give me everything from the left table, and then, if there's a match in the right table, awesome. Include that too.
But if not,
Well, then those columns from the right table, they'll just be in LL.
which is super useful when you need every record from that primary table, even if some info is missing.
Right. Like, imagine an interviewer asks for a list of all customers and their orders. A left join from the customers table to the orders table, well, that'd show you all your customers, even the ones who haven't placed an order yet.
With NLL in those order-related columns.
Exactly. Be prepared to walk them through that use case. Explain why left join is the perfect tool for that job.
Okay, then you've got the opposite, right join. Everything from the right table, matching rows from the left, and again, NLLs where stuff's missing from the left. And then there's the big one, full join, sometimes called full outer join.
It's a grand combination.
It brings together everything from both tables, NLLs, where there's no match on either side. Now, what's really important in an interview is to articulate when you'd choose each of these joins.
You got to justify your choice.
You do. So let's say you wanted all products and any discounts associated with them, but you also wanted to see all discounts, even if they weren't currently being used on any product.
A full join would be a good shout there.
It would. Being able to explain that reasoning, that's what shows real SQL proficiency.
It's not just about knowing the syntax. It's about understanding the when and the why.
All right. Our sources also threw in natural join and cross join.
Now, those are a bit more specialized.
They are. Natural join, it tries to automatically join tables based on columns with the same name. Sounds handy, but...
But be careful with that one. It can be a bit unpredictable. You might accidentally join on columns that aren't logically related.
Yeah, it can get messy. And then there's cross join. This one, it creates every possible combination of rows from the two tables.
The Cartesian product, if you want to get technical.
It's a lot of data. It's not used super often, but understand the concept, and if it comes up in an interview, be ready to explain why you might use it in a specific situation.
Always be prepared to justify your choices. It shows you're thinking critically.
Okay, let's move on from just retrieving data. Let's talk about summarizing it, getting those insights. That's where aggregate functions come in. Count. AQM, A2G, MIN, max.
The power of summarization.
They work on a whole set of rows and give you back a single summarized value. Like, if an interviewer asks for the total number of orders, boom, select count from orders.
Right to the point.
And to get the average price of all your products, you'd use select AVG price from products.
That's easy.
It is. But here's another interview tip. You can use count, column name, to count just the non-null values in a particular column.
Oh, that's handy.
And count, distinct column name, will give you the number of unique values, which is really useful for data analysis.
So many possibilities with count.
There are. Now, to use these aggregate functions on specific groups within your data, you need the group by Y clause. If you want to know the total sales for each product category, you'd use select category, HESM sales, from sales data group by category.
You're grouping similar things together.
Exactly. And then to filter these grouped results, that's when you bring in the having clause. This is super important to understand for interviews because it's different from where.
Where filters individual rows before you group them. Having filters those groups after the aggregation has happened.
Big difference. So if you only wanted to see product categories with total sales over a certain amount, you'd use having some sales greater than that amount.
Understanding the distinction between where and having, that's a sign you really know how SQL works, how it executes those commands.
It shows you're thinking at a deeper level.
For sure.
All right, let's dive into subqueries now. These are queries nested inside other queries.
It's like Inception, but for SQL.
Kind of, yeah.
Hmm.
These are really powerful, and you might encounter them in more complex interview questions. They can show up in different parts of a SQL statement, the where clause, the from clause, even in the select list.
They're versatile.
They are. The simplest kind is a single value subquery. It gives you back just one row and one column. You can use these with the normal comparison operators, like select name from city, where population, select AVG, population from city.
That'll find cities with a population bigger than the average population across all cities.
Right, and when you explain this in an interview, emphasize that the inner query, the one inside the parentheses, that gets evaluated first, and then the outer query uses its result.
It's like a two-step process.
Then you got multiple value subqueries. These can give you back multiple rows or columns.
They're often used with operators like in, exists, all, any.
Right, so select product name from products where categoried in. Select in from categories where is active equals 1.
That would find products that belong to active categories.
Yep. Make sure you can explain how those operators work with the set of values the subquery returns.
Because it's not just a single value anymore, it's a set.
And then there are correlated subqueries. These are, they can be a bit tricky.
They can be, but they're really powerful.
They are. What's interesting about them, especially for interview discussions, is that they depend on the outer query. They actually refer to columns from the outer query's tables, so you can't just run them independently.
They're linked?
They are. Classic example. You want to find customers who've placed more orders than the average for their region.
So you need to know the average for that specific region.
Right. So the inner query, the one that calculates the average, it needs information from the outer query, specifically the region.
Being able to explain this, understanding how it works, that shows a deeper level of SQL knowledge.
All right, moving on to set operations. These let you combine the results of two or more independent queries.
Like puzzle pieces fitting together.
In a way, yeah. Key thing to remember, and this is important for interviews, the queries you're combining, they got to have the same number of columns, and those columns got to have compatible data types.
You can't be comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly. 3 main set operations: union, intersect, and except, which is sometimes called minus in some SQL flavors.
Right, different systems, slight variations.
Union combines everything and tosses out duplicates. Union all combines everything but keeps all the duplicates. Intersect gives you only the rows that are in both result sets.
And except, or minus, gives you the rows that are in the first set, but not in the second.
And again, in an interview, be ready to explain when you'd use each one.
For instance, you might use union all to combine customer lists from 2 different databases if you need a complete list, even if some customers are on both.
Makes sense. All right, last but not least, we got to talk about window functions.
Oh, these are powerful.
They are. They let you do calculations across a set of rows that are related to the current row. But, and this is key, you don't collapse those rows like you do with group by Y.
You keep all the detail.
This is a more advanced topic, but even showing a basic understanding, that can really make you stand out.
It shows you're going beyond the basics.
It does. So what's the fundamental thing to grasp here? The over clause. This defines your window, the set of rows the function will work on. Inside over, you can use a partition by clause, which divides your rows into groups, partitions, and the window function gets applied to each partition separately. It's like a temporary group by that doesn't actually group your results.
Exactly. You can also have an order by clause within each partition that'll determine the order of the rows within that window.
Our source mentioned something interesting, that as of 2020, the Groups S window frame option was mostly in PostgreSQL, but more generally, you'll see things like rows between unbounded preceding and current row to define the set of rows in your window.
Bit of a mouthful, but important to understand.
It is. Now, some common window functions. You've got ranking functions like row number, rank, and denser rank. These assign a rank to each row within a partition based on your order by clause. Row number gives each row a unique number, even if they have the same values. Rank gives the same rank to ties, but it leaves gaps in the ranking sequence. So you might get 1, 1, 3.
And then denser rank, it also assigns the same rank to ties, but the ranking is always consecutive, so 1, 1, 2.
Right. Be ready to explain those subtle differences, especially if you're in an interview where ranking data is important.
They might try to trip you up with those.
Now, you can also use aggregate functions as window functions. For example, SEUM sales over, partition by region order by order date.
That would calculate a running total of sales for each region, showing you how each order contributes to that running total.
Very cool. And then you've got analytic functions like lead and lag. They let you access data from subsequent or preceding rows within the same partition. Super useful for comparing values across time or related records.
So many possibilities.
There are. Even a basic grasp of that over clause with partition by and order by, knowing a few ranking and aggregate window functions, that can really impress an interviewer, especially if they're looking for someone who can handle more sophisticated data analysis.
It's about showing them you can go beyond the simple stuff.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. A whole deep dive into SQL fundamentals, all with your interview prep in mind.
Mission accomplished.
We've done basic querying with select, from, where, order by, all the nuances of like between in is not null.
We talked about all those different joins: inner, left, right, full, cross, and natural. We went through when you'd use each one.
Then we got into aggregate functions. Count, sm, avg, min, max, how to use them with group by and having.
We tackled subqueries, all those different types: set operations, union, intersect, except, and the whole concept of window functions, with that all-important over clause, partition by, order by, and those ranking functions like rank and denser rank.
And look, understanding all this, it truly gives you a leg up in interviews, especially those focused on data. It's not just about spitting out syntax, it's about understanding why you use each clause, each function, being able to explain it clearly, give examples, just like we've done here.
Exactly. Showing that depth of knowledge, that's what makes you stand out.
Now, this brings us to a really important question for you, the listener, as you're preparing for those interviews. Now that you've got this deeper understanding of SQL, what specific questions, those ones that trip people up about data manipulation, about database interactions, do you feel more confident answering?
Take a moment. Think about some real-world scenarios. How would you use this knowledge?
And don't forget, SQL has different dialects, things like PostgreSQL, MySQL, SQL Server. Each might have some unique functions or behaviors. Exploring those further or diving deeper into more advanced SQL topics, that'll definitely boost your confidence even more.
Keep learning, keep practicing.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into SQL.
It's been fun.